I said, hey man, this is a cool building. Just check it out. It's too bad it's too expensive. And so we just kind of laughed it off, and the Bible study started and developed. God was also opening this door with this acquisition of the property. I can walk away from the widows and just let them be without a pastor, which just broke my heart, to be honest. Or I can just trust God with this.
The vacuous nature of the room becomes a learning tool, a lesson that you can leverage. Where in your home, what you're doing is establishing a culture of, we're going to be a church that primarily meets with people, because ministry isn't about ministry. It's about souls. It's about love. It's about compassion, weeping with people.
We prayed and we asked him to close it. Decision by decision, God allowed us to finally land here. We own a building, but I'm not indebted to this building. Like, it's just a tool, the things that we're going to all be given to. Preaching the word of God, winning souls, making disciples.
Hi, I'm Brandon Briscoe, and welcome to the Postscript, Living Faith Bible Institute's weekly podcast that invites listeners into in-depth theological and ministry conversations with pastors, Bible scholars, missionaries, and professors. When a missionary or pastor plants a church, they're not just gathering people together. They're making decisions that quietly shape the work for years to come. And one of the decisions that carries great weight is that of space. Decisions such as, where do we meet? When do we start meeting on Sundays? How does our team stay nimble and mission focused without the burden of being homeless or overbuilt? Today's conversation sits right in the tension of the blessings of having a building, but also the burdens that it can introduce, especially when the work is still small and the people are still growing. My guest today on the Postscript is Blade Sbisa, a church planting pastor in St. Louis, who's just getting the work on the ground with a very small team. Blade recently stepped into a rare opportunity to purchase a building at a phenomenal price, complete with a parsonage and everything that you could imagine, before the plant really even got started or was ready to use the building itself. So what do we do when the building is bigger than the congregation? How does it affect the culture and set the expectations? Blade is thinking through all of this in real time, and his process is going to help a lot of future church planters in our fellowship and our Bible Institute. And so we want to think more clearly, and we want to gather some thoughts about buildings, about stewardship, and the work of making disciples. And so with all of that, Blade, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to join you.
It's really good to have you. Yeah, it seems like we were just hanging out at Mission Focus not long ago and talking about buildings and really, I mean, I think what I pitched to you at the time was like, I'd really want to do a series of interviews that address all of the dilemmas that come with church planting in terms of meeting spaces, whether it's in homes or buildings, or renting buildings, or buying buildings, or whatever it might be. I think it'd be really helpful for people. And so obviously you're in a really unique situation right now.
Sure.
Do you mind sharing with everybody about like kind of what's going on, like how you just got to St. Louis, but also God has blessed you mightily with this incredible resource? Explain to everybody what's the current status of the church plant.
Yeah, so God gave us the opportunity to purchase a building in the center of the greater metropolitan of St. Louis. And we had the opportunity maybe about a month ago to move to this property, which also has a parsonage next to a church building that's way larger than what we need. And so currently, the team that we have is about 5 people plus kids. So we have us as a couple, myself, my wife, our 2 boys, another couple from Midtown Baptist Temple and their 2 girls, and then a young, faithful single lady who is just a great evangelist. And so we're thankful for the team that God's given us. And then around that group, we are trusting the Lord to continue the Bible study we started about a year ago. And that group, a lot of those members are praying about joining us, but are currently attending other works. And then a third group is a small group of widows that used to meet in the building that we acquired. And I don't know if they're going to be a part yet, but we're trusting the Lord to minister to them. And so we have this big building and just this little team, and we're trusting the Lord to do what we can to utilize the tool well for the mission.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely something that I'm learning. It's new. There's a lot of moving parts, and as I mentioned to you, it's been a really full season with sickness and holidays, a missions conference, and so we really feel like we've only been here a week or so. We have had a first service. God gave us 17 that joined for that first service. Some were
Mm.
just guests that were visiting. Some of that was family. Other of those were the widows and the people that we're connected with through Bible study. And so that was really, really special, something we celebrated. But then the second service that we had, we just had our core team, no widows, nobody from Bible study, and 3 guests from the street that saw our street sign. And so
Mm.
um, it's just kind of going to be something we'll have to navigate and trust. I'm going to have to trust the Lord to have wisdom to know how to lead the random group of people that He's given. So
Right. Yes, it's really, really fresh for
very
you.
fresh.
And just, we did a previous interview together. And so, we talked about a lot of these things, but just for the sake of helping the listeners who haven't heard that episode, explain why St. Louis and tell us a little bit about the philosophy of ministry that you're bringing to St. Louis. The things that distinguish maybe our approach to church planting
Sure.
from other approaches, right? Maybe walk us through some of that just to give us a little bit more context.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to enter into this, a lot of ways to church plant. I've told our people that the last thing we want to do is buy a building, do all the right marketing, and then call it church. There's no
Mm-hmm.
life in that. That's a business for all practical terms. And so, yeah, we're trusting the Lord to reach souls by getting on the streets, getting on campus, meeting people, winning people to Christ, discipling them. We think the best way to do that is getting the Bible open. And so, rather than trusting in like schemes and things that look shiny, just trusting that the Bible
Mm-hmm.
does the work and getting the Word of God to people, and then reconciling people to Christ through it. And so, uh, that's the background that I've come from through Midtown Baptist Temple. I learned how to do Bible study there. I came to Christ through a Bible study in a roundabout way, found community for the first time in Bible study, and then through that, really got knitted into a local church, and then got equipped there and grew there as a leader. Then in 2017, I was sent out of Midtown Baptist Temple to be a part of a church plant in Lee Summit, and there at that church plant, the main method that we're trying to use to win people to Christ and get them discipled is once again Bible study. And so that's exactly how we entered into the city of St. Louis. The long story is
Mm-hmm.
over the last decade, God has continued to uh, give me a burden for the city that initially began with just curiosity for who might show up and stand in the gap on behalf of the people. And then it grew into a growing burden as I realized there is no one that is like minded who's trying to carry this philosophy into the city. And so, as of 2022, we felt the call in our life to begin praying for the city. And then God has, through a long series of events, led us to now move to the city and begin the work. And so we're excited to be here and just learning how to do that thing. I know it's the right thing. I know that that's how ministry gets done. But it's hard when
Mm-hmm.
you're a small team and you're alone. You may have all the right answers, but then doing it in a new context and trying to manage priorities is just difficult. So that's something that I'm working
Yeah.
through. Plenty of challenges with owning a building and knowing how to steward that well, but also not get distracted by it. So I'm learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is exactly why I wanted to do this interview with you, because I wanted
Sure.
you to process out loud some of the things that you're feeling this early in the game. And so, you know, let's imagine for a moment before you knew that there was a building that would be an option.
Yeah.
Describe to us what you imagine the first 6 to 12 months of being in St. Louis would be like, absent big space to meet in. Like, what were you? planning on doing? I mean, again, you shared some of this in the last time we talked, but just picture for us what you thought was going to go down, and then we could talk from there about how that changed.
So when we initially landed in St. Louis, the goal was to land in a centralized location because of the connections we had, and they were all scattered throughout the greater metropolitan. Somebody out way in Winsville, for those that know the area, and then way down in South County, and then somebody out in Wash U. And so we knew that at the time when we were planning and trusting the Lord to enter into the city, we didn't want to immediately carve people off. And so the idea was, okay, we've got a little window that we're trying to land in, find a home, and then transition a Bible study that we started into our living room, and then trust the Lord to grow out of that space.
Mm-hmm.
And so as the Bible study started and developed, God was also opening this door with this acquisition of the property and the home. And so we, while we were entertaining the idea of doing kind of a loose house church network plant, I was also trying to think through, okay, what is this church going to look like if we are able to acquire a space? And a lot of those thoughts felt pretty familiar to me because I was already entertaining them. While I thought we would start as a home Bible study, I was also praying through what it would look like to purchase a home or a building or an old church that I could rehab, I could repurpose, I could create a business out of. I could become a landlord for, and put a qualifying clause that said we had access to the space on Sunday mornings. I was entertaining all possibilities, and had just spent
Mm-hmm.
really hundreds of hours looking at properties and homes, and just trying to make sense. Like, okay, how are we going to enter in to this city? How am I going to be able to use my time effectively? What are the skill sets that God's given me, and how can I repurpose those in my unique context? And so
Mm-hmm.
there are so many moving parts when entertaining how you're going to enter into a city. Obviously, that city, that real estate market's going to dictate a lot. Your skill set and your ability to navigate space and construction is going to mean a lot. And then also just the culture, I think, is really important. There's some cities that it may not make sense to own a building for a long time, and allow yourself a lot of flexibility because nobody commutes, or commuting looks like trains, and it looks like walking. And so it would
Mm-hmm.
make a lot more sense to have little micro communities that you're creating as you're seeing the work develop. And so anyway, a ton of
Mm-hmm.
thoughts you have to navigate as the planner. And so when God opened the door with the building, we just began to pray through, okay, how are we going to utilize this tool well for the mission?
Yeah, and I want to unpack those variables because I think that they're relevant, especially for guys that are going to one day be working through these same things or are currently going through it, missionaries that are on the field right now. So let's just back up a little bit and explain
Sure.
how you did acquire the building, because there was some complication in that, and maybe you can give us some of the details about what that looked like, why that was hard, and how it turned out as positively as it did.
Yeah, sure. I don't know specifically what you're hitting on. I think the easiest way will be for me to just kind of share how the whole thing
Hmm.
unfolded, kind of demystify the process.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
it began with me at like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. at night, just looking through a bunch of real estate and trying to make sense
Hmm.
of the market in St. Louis. That probably began in 2022 when we first had a burden for the city. Now that was way, cart before the horse. It really just began out of curiosity, like where am I headed to? How can I begin learning the city and the streets and the areas? And so began with curiosity, and then led to me actually showing up in the city and touring properties. We probably looked at 10 to 15 properties, homes, buildings, church buildings. Um, well, sure enough, once we committed to making the decision to move our lives to St. Louis in June of, I think, 2023, we just made a trip out to the city and drove around and looked at properties that were for sale. Not any that we really thought we were going to buy, but just trying to learn areas.
Hmm.
One of the buildings we drove by is the church building I'm currently sitting in, and we laughed at it. I mean, we drove by it and we were like, this property is way too expensive. Yes, it's really cool. It would be amazing to plant here. I even sent it to Dan and was like, hey, bro, this is a cool
Your
building.
head pastor,
My
your
my,
sending
my head
pastor.
pastor, my sending pastor, I said, hey man, this is a cool building. Just check it out. It's too bad it's too expensive. And so we just kind of laughed it off and went about our weekend. And then 4 months later, we made a public announcement that we were gonna be planning in St. Louis at Certainty Conference through the Living Faith Fellowship. And Brian Hedges, who is a fellowship pastor, came up to me and said, "Hey, bro, I don't know anybody in that city anymore, but I know an old church planner who used to be there that we supported." And so I made a connection with that guy. Just wanted to learn his story and his burden for the city. Um, the phone call closes. 4 months go by. The week that we're starting a Bible study in the city of St. Louis, I get a call from that guy, and he's like, "Hey, man, I don't know if you would have any interest in this building, but I have a connection to a building that's being sold in Maryland Heights. If you have interest, let me know." And so I was like, "Well, sure. I have interest. Where is it at?" And sure enough, it's the building that I had already looked at.
Right.
And I told him, I was like, "Hey, this is way out of our price range, but I'm more than willing to still attend a service this Sunday if they would let us in." And he's like, "Here, let me see if I can connect you to the kind of interim temporary pastor that was standing in the pulpit." And so the same week we had started a Bible study. The pastor that had actually built this church had passed away with some health complications. And there was a group of widows who were meeting in the space, and a pastor traveling from Jeff City 2 hours away to just lead their services for about a year. And so I show up that Sunday, the day after we started a Bible study, and began to build a relationship with these ladies, and then just trust God for what it could look like to acquire the property. Initially, I connected with the seller, the Baptist Missionary Association of America, and was trying to lease the space. So my desire initially was not to buy. I didn't want to be fixed in that way. That's a big
Right. Right.
piece of buying a building that really isn't amazing, and that is being restricted to a particular area really quickly. And
Yeah.
so I was trying to lease and just remain flexible. Nonetheless, the seller did not want that. I wrote letters to the board, called the board, was invited into meetings in Jeff City that I attended, and just slowly was trying to build a relationship with the Baptist Missionary Association and share my burden. Well, over time, it became pretty clear that they didn't want to lease and that they were only willing to sell. And so I was left in a position to say, okay, if we continue to move forward, um, well, I can walk away from the widows and just let them be without a pastor, which just broke my heart, to be honest. Or I can just trust God with this and continue to knock on the door and say, okay, here's a low offer. Would you even entertain us as a small church plant? And so that's what I did. And that offer got accepted. And then we went through a long due diligence process where for about 9 months, we were working through, inspections and appraisals, and come to find out a building appraised um, a couple $100,000 over what our offer was. And then through the inspections, we were also able to take off another, I think it was like 50 to 100 grand, um, in the process of finding some issues that knew that I might have to take on in the first couple years. And so God just really blessed us in allowing us to acquire this through a long series of me knocking and then God never shutting that door. And so it's something I really wrestled with. There wasn't really a moment that I got indebted to the space. It's not in an area of the city that is super like lively and fun. It's not in a great neighborhood, but it's super central. And so that was something that was really attractive to me because that's what I was praying for. And that's what I was trusting God for, was to land central. And so we don't know, I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know if this is the right decision, but I do feel the Lord has opened the door, and we prayed and we asked him to close it. And decision by decision, God allowed us to finally land here. So
Hello, my name is Brian Clark, and I'm a church planter in the city of London, but I'm also an instructor with the Living Faith Bible Institute. And one of the courses that I teach is a course on evangelism. This is one of those things that all of us as believers really want to be. We want to be soul winners, but many of us just don't know how. So in this course, we lay out for anybody, regardless of your knowledge of the Bible or your experience, we lay out a way and an understanding and a philosophy of evangelism that will equip you and empower you to be able to share your faith with anybody. You can check out this course and others like it on lfbi.org.
I'm curious, in the process, could you see, just imagine yourself as another pastor, how you could get fixated? Like, maybe share with us a little bit about what it's like to keep yourself removed and trusting the Lord, despite the way that things twist and turn, and despite how
Yeah.
inspections go, or
Yeah.
what the loan company is saying, or like,
Yeah.
what does it look like for you to just continue to be full of faith, despite the fact that maybe in your flesh, or at least your intellect or your
Yeah.
heart is pining after this thing that isn't yours yet, right? Like, not coveting.
I don't know how to do that perfectly or what even probably well. But I would just say it terrifies me to death to think that I would make a decision like purchasing a building and then it be a wrong decision. I think God gives us a lot of liberty and we should be at peace. But the idea of like forcing ourselves into something, like that is not a life that I want to live um, before the Lord. Like that just sounds scary and
Right.
like a big waste. And
To
so
be
I think
and to be
that's
tied
probably
down to
and to
be
be
tied
tied down.
down to
So
something.
I was going to say, so for me, the reason I can just speak personally. The reason it wasn't super attractive to me was for that very reason. Like I didn't. It was equally. I want this space and I want to use this tool and I want to have a home and kind of simplify the entrance into the city as much as it was. I don't want to be here. I don't really like the area in terms of moving my family across from a 7-Eleven, a city bus stop with a homeless camp down the hill, and a
Mm-hmm.
Denny's across the street. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's not really
Right.
where I want to move my family and trust God to meet families. And so it, for a number of reasons, it was equally. I really want this tool, and I can see how we can use this tool for the mission. Or Lord, if you want us to look totally different, I'm willing to do that too. I really just want to say yes, and I want that yes to be honest, no matter what you ask. And so, if that means
Mm-hmm.
for 5 years we're just starting one-on-one Bible studies and campus Bible studies, and we're doing this loose network of Bible study church plant house thing that honestly kind of makes me look like a failure as a church planter, Lord, I'm fine with that. Like whatever you want, I just want to say yes. And so I think in my situation, I was just saying yes to the phone call I got, to the invitation I got, and to the opportunity I had to purchase. And it's easy for me to say that on this side, and so I can see where if you don't have a building or a space, you would long for that. But we own a building, but I'm not indebted to this building. Like it's just a tool to do ministry.
Right.
It's not a church. It's not a church plant. Like the work is souls and it's people. And so if God wants us to sell this building tomorrow and he wanted to use this building to give us equity and give us cash to move somewhere else, I'm fine with that. If he wanted me to spend a few months to rehab a house so that it was a little bit more desirable for the future buyer, like so be it. I don't know how God wants to fund our mission. I don't know how he wants to move in our life. I want to be flexible. I don't think it's wise to get
Mm-hmm.
rid of this building in a month for the opportunity cost that is now at hand. Uh, but I'm willing. I'm willing to give all that up. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever the Lord wants, I would rather be there.
How have things changed in terms of your, immediately now you have a building. I
Yeah.
mean, you're in the space right now. I mean, I can see in the background that you're still moving in. This
Yeah,
stuff left behind from
for
the
sure.
previous occupiers. But practically and spiritually, how have things changed almost immediately now that you have the building? And what ways does a building help a young work? Like, what are the benefits? But what are also the cons and the pressures that come with having it?
Right. Those are two, obviously separate questions here. Um, the first is initially why I didn't want the building. I knew that if we purchased the building, my life would immediately become harder. The temptation is to think you have a building, everything is going to be easier as a church plant. Oh, you kind of have everything solved and everything's figured out for you. But I knew that, at least in the short term, that the two situations were me slowly move my family into a new city and into a home in an area that we kind of want to be in and trust the Lord to grow out of a Bible study and have people over to our home and eat meals together, and it's more casual and it's more fun. Next to purchase a building, have a lot of construction, have some repairs, have to spend the first 2 weeks making sure the home is livable for my family, making sure the signs changed, redoing the branding, on and on and on. Like coupled with
Hmm.
also, okay, now there's a core group of widows that I'm immediately trusting the Lord to minister to. The pressure of also utilizing the tool well. I've got payments that I wouldn't have otherwise. It's more expensive initially in the short term, cash flow wise, to do the building thing. And so it wasn't as attractive, and it's come with challenges for sure. I think long term though, it's the best use of finances. I think long term though, it allows us to simplify getting started and kind of getting all of the distractions away. It is true, a building can become very distracting, but doing mobile church and transitioning your people through three different spaces or four different spaces, like we did in Lee Summit, is also very distracting. Where all of your
Yeah.
missions and leadership meetings are about how are we going to logistically make this work, and is the trailer big enough for our needs? And oh, we got to set up and tear down. And oh, when's practice going to be for worship? And on and on.
Yeah.
That's those are a lot of issues.
Just to pause there for a second for the sake of people who are
Sure.
listening. So when you guys planted the church in Lee Summit, which is a part of the KC Metro, it started as a Bible study. It grew, it bloated to the point where everyone recognized that it needed to be a church. So we decided to plant a church in Lee Summit. Midtown Baptist Temple decided to plant a church in Lee Summit. Then you moved into a space, but what it meant was you were storing things in a trailer because that space was being used for other things throughout the week. And then on Sunday, you were unloading the trailer, rain or shine, cold or hot, setting up the facility, and then tearing down. The same way Midtown Baptist Temple was in fact planted in those early days.
But we had a core team.
You had a core team. You did. You had
Yeah.
more people then than you do currently in
Oh,
St.
for
Louis.
sure. For sure.
But here is the complex thing that I want to visit with you and maybe revisit
Sure.
later. But is so that is a refining, pioneering thing. So all the people that were involved with that process of setting up and tearing down and being constrained and being forced into situations that were uncomfortable,
Mhm.
working longer, staying later, coming earlier, the kind of inconvenience of being displaced a little bit was refining for the leaders and the people that were being discipled and growing.
Yes.
So then, and so now you're saying that there's a different set of problems that come with having a building. In what ways are those things refining, or do you lose something? Do you lose something in the process of developing these disciples? And then they kind of have the convenience of having a space to meet, a space to call their own. Is something lost along the way, or do you just have to ensure that there are other ways in which you're preparing the people that are joining you?
Yeah, I think it's that latter piece. I do think you lose something. To be very fair to the question, I do think there is something that Living Faith St. Louis will never understand that a lot of people understood as we got started at Lee Summit. I think all of those same lessons can be learned in other areas. The ministry is filled with problems. And I think as long as a leader, as a leader, you are envisioning people and helping people understand the nature of what the mission is, then the mission comes with plenty of roadblocks and hindrances to build in those ultimately character qualities about persevering and grit, however you want to say it, opportunities of faith, hard work. Church planting is hard work, and so you can either do the hard work of the mobile setup, tear down, constantly flexible, only get the space 4 hours hard work, or you can yes, have a building, but then maintain the space, figure out how to navigate construction projects as they come up, and all the other needs that come with maintaining a building. I just think it's up to the leader to envision the people and help people understand what it takes. But yeah, there's probably something you lose in terms of actually mobilizing people to the work.
Explain too, because a lot of the church planters in our fellowship in the world, anybody that might be listening to this who's just intrigued by the subject, they don't have the backing. They don't have the support that you had necessarily in your sending church. And so maybe explain a little bit about that, the uniqueness of that situation in terms of what your pastor and your leadership team were willing to invest and how that made all of this possible to begin with.
Yeah,
Because I think that's unique. I think it is truly a unique situation that a lot of guys just don't have that privilege or opportunity.
absolutely. I am super blessed to have the support that I have from my sending church. So as the associate pastor there, when I was sent out, Dan said, "We want to support you," but there was never a conversation about a building. And so initially, when I brought the idea of purchasing a building, it was always shut down. There was never really the backing that I kind of wanted as the missionary being sent. I wanted that support. And so I actually got to the point where I was expressing that I wanted to sell my personal home and utilize or try to figure out a way to utilize the equity in my home to purchase this building. And so I was starting conversations saying, okay, I'm going to donate all my income off my home and just give it to Living Faith Lee Summit, and then figure out ultimately how the Lord's going to provide for us in the process of all of that. That's what initially kind of triggered a conversation with my leaders to say, "Oh no, this guy's he kind of means business." And so from there, I'm thankful. But Dan and a few other leaders had a willingness to come and see the building, and then it truly was just a process after that of numbers. Like if the numbers made sense, then we would move forward. If they didn't, we wouldn't. And what that meant was, as a church planner, you don't have any credit. Like the bank doesn't care about you. Typically, a bank's going to look for about 3 years of cash flow to have some security and and believing that you're not high risk. Well, we didn't have any cash flow because last year we were traveling and we were trying to raise money to get this work started. And so for me to approach a bank and get financing was just a complete joke. For me to personally do that too under my own name was a risk to myself. It also forfeited the tax benefits of being a nonprofit. And so Living Faith Lee Summit was kind enough to be a co-signer. They actually signed for the loan. It's actually not fair to say co-signer. They signed. They're the owners of the loan, but we're technically making all the payments. So any money that's given to Living Faith St. Louis is paying for the expense of this church. But in terms of what the bank sees, the bank, is that final piece because of Living Faith Lee Summit being our credit. And so I'm super grateful that Lee Summit took that risk, but it was also on the basis of us having equity as soon as we moved in. We would have never have entertained this building if there was not a home on the property or there wasn't an obvious way to build out a living quarters in the home. We just would not, it wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
even have been a conversation for a second. Because the reality is, unless you have a lot of money as the church planner, or you have somebody on your team who has a lot of money in a big home, um, you're going to have to figure out a way to start a Bible study in your living room and then navigate the difficulty of scaling out of that space and the likelihood of you being in a city where you can buy a home big enough to scale to 50 people, and oh, by the way, have parking to be able to
Mm-hmm.
facilitate that. That's very difficult. And so the reality is, one of the biggest expenses that you're going to have as a church planner and getting the work started is your home, if it's going to be big enough to plan out of that. Or you obviously
Mm-hmm.
rent small or buy small, and then you have the separate expense of doing storefront church, or whatever that may look like. For us, it was a wedding venue
Right.
space in Lee Summit. And so I just, the idea of folding the expense of our living into also a space that we could use for the ministry um,
Yeah.
made so much sense to me. So
Right. Yeah. And again, just so incredibly specific and uniquely prepared, right? So, and you have to be careful because you could get trapped. You could get into a situation where you want a building so bad, you want a space so bad that you end up with something that's not of the Lord, and you force it. And in this case, it was, you were being observant, you were watching, and then as opportunity arose, you just couldn't deny that it was uniquely for you, and that's an amazing thing. And I do want to come back to what you're going to do with the congregation, though. I want to talk about the
sure.
spiritual components of just shepherding. So, for a small kind of immature congregation, what matters most in terms of where you're meeting? So you said you kind of got a couple of different small congregations meeting already, Bible studies that are gathering in homes and different places. Explain your philosophy and methods that you're wrestling with in terms of like keeping things within homes for certain activities that promote certain kinds of fellowship or discipleship versus rushing into the building and then things not being scaled appropriately. So now you're got two or three people meeting in a large empty room in a church building that's not really alive yet. That's not really,
No,
you
man.
know,
Yeah.
church is not, doesn't look like fellowship yet. So tell us about that dynamic of like that alongside Sunday services.
Oh, man.
What are you gonna do with Sunday services if you've just
Yeah.
got three or four people meeting on Sundays? Are you going to be in the sanctuary? Are you going to choose a classroom? Walk us through what you're thinking.
It's not straightforward, and I'm learning, and I don't know what's best, to be honest. That's the initial question. As attractive as the building is, you're exactly right. A few people in a big empty space doesn't feel great, and feelings don't matter. uh, Conclusions that people come to may be wrong, but the reality is their perception still matters. So I'll just
Mm-hmm.
speak to the little pool of data that I have. Two services and a single Bible study as we've landed here. The first
Mm-hmm.
service, we had 17 people in the space. The church probably seats 250. It felt kind of felt kind of exciting because it was kind of the first service, and there's a good number of people there. The second service we had, it was me. My wife was sick, so with the kids, so she actually wasn't able to attend. Uh, Three other of our members, and then three guests from the streets. And so here's the point: is even if the Spirit of God is with us, we're walking with the Spirit of God, we're preaching the Word of God, we're holding to the things that God wants. He's blessing it. We're actually growing. We're seeing people come in. Perceptually, it looks like we're a dead church, and people begin to wonder, who is this guy? Is this legitimate? Is this a cult? What am I at? What am I doing? And so I think, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we have to currently navigate how to make a space that feels inviting and and not try to manufacture anything, but just do our due diligence to really be hospitable and invite people in. And I think that means smalling the space as much as we can. There's a number of ways to do that. But take, for example, the Bible study that we had this last week. I decided, because of my kids being sick, and our house still being super out of order because of just moving in and whatnot, to do the Bible study in the basement of the church. There's some partitions, so I closed off the space a little bit. I set it next to the kitchen. We made some food. We have music going. I tried to make it somewhat comfortable to feel a little bit more homey. And even after that, I mean, we maybe had like 10 people join, and some people online. And even after that, I told Yabs, I was like, hey, the Bible study's in our home next time. It's too cold. It's too stiff. Because that's my time too, with my core group, to really share life with them, to let them see us try to wrangle our kids for dinner and get them to bed, and hear them cry and figure it out. And they get to see me as a father and a husband, and they're in my space, and we get to cook and do life together. That stuff's so important. And
Right.
I want to share that with people. I want people to have that built into our DNA from day one. Welcome to my home. Come see my life. Come see me. Sit on my couch. Cry. Be here. I want that space. And so, a home Bible study is familiar to me, and I really want that. But at the same time, God's given us this building, and so, what the heck? I'm gonna just do all ministry out of a home, out of our homes, and then I'm paying for a building that I'm not using. That also doesn't make any sense. And so, okay, I've got to update the sign, and I've got to figure out ways to leverage the building to reach people that I would never be able to reach. I mean, hundreds of people drive by this building. And in the first week of changing the sign out, God gave us, 3 people in our doors. It's like, that's not nothing. And I want to utilize that well. I'm personally convicted and of the persuasion that the pulpit ministry is to be for the edification of the saints. And so when we meet on Sunday mornings and we do service, um, I really want to just teach the word. Obviously, we're going to share the gospel, and the saints ought to be encouraged and blessed by that. But in the preaching of the word, we go out. We got to reach people as we go out in the city. Something you asked me earlier was, what are the things you lose by not doing mobile church? And we kind of talked through some of that grit that you need and that hard work that you need for set up tear down church. I think there are some things that we will get to learn in this setting that we never learned in Lee Summit. For example, when we come together in a church that seats 250 plus, and it's 5 of us, we have a lesson to learn, and ultimately that lesson's in your face. The church is not a building. I mean, it is just it is just slapping you across the face. It's an empty space,
Right.
and you're forced to deal with, like, what do you think the success of the church is? How loud are you going to sing when everybody can hear your voice? And you have that in a home and whatnot. But I think it really does something to the heart to say, like, who's our audience
Yeah.
and why are we here? The reason we're going to meet on Sunday mornings is because the Lord has asked us to not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. Does that have to be in the building? No, it doesn't. But God's given us a building, so Lord, help us use it.
What you're saying is super important, and maybe the most important thing is that regardless of the circumstances that you face, you have to recognize that the culture that you create is the culture that you create, and
Yep.
it's the one that you have to live with, right? And so if you're meeting in a large space, what is it that's being informed, right? What's being pressed upon the people? If
Yeah.
there's 5 people in a room that seats 250, what are the lessons that you're teaching? I mean, I think that one of the things you'd say is like, look at how much work we have to do.
Right.
Look at all these seats that are that represent future souls. And so, like, kind of the vacuous nature of the room becomes a learning tool, a lesson that you can
Yep.
leverage. Where in your home, what you're doing is establishing a culture of we're going to be a church that primarily meets with people, because ministry isn't about ministry. It's about people. It's about souls. It's about love. It's about compassion and homes and breaking bread. And like you said, sitting with people, weeping with people in places that represent the most intimate part of our life, says something really important about the way that you plan on doing ministry, not now, but 10 years from now. And
Right.
so I think that that's the critical part, is that how are you training in certain ways of thinking into what's now just an amoeba of a church.
Yeah, very much so. And I think you're really hitting on what is hard for me to articulate, but the church planner, or all of us in life and ministry, are never going to be given all of the cards. And so, okay, you've got cards in your hand, you have a deck, and you've got to determine how are you going to play what God has given you and what you're holding.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
you're never left in the situation where you're able to leverage everything well, and you have all the resources, and that place of dependency is a really great one. And so, as exactly as you articulated, it's just up to the leader and the leaders as they're envisioned to really show, okay, what culture are we going to build, and how are we going to maintain the mission? And you're just using
Mm-hmm.
the again, the thing in your hand to continue to teach the points and illustrate the things that we're going to all be given to: preaching the word of God,
Mm-hmm.
winning souls, making disciples. So
Hi, I'm Mike Renault, pastor at Living Faith in Boston, Massachusetts. And if you're considering learning the Word of God, Living Faith Bible Institute would be a good place for you. The good thing about LFBI is that you're not just learning from an academic standpoint. You're learning from actual practitioners that do in fact know the book. These are pastors and men who are leading churches, doing the work themselves, since they can give you a firsthand, real-life knowledge of what it means to learn the Bible in that context. Some of you may have a call in your life for the pastorate, to be a missionary, to serve the Lord in other parts of the world. Living Faith Bible Institute can prepare you in a way that you can be equipped with the Word of God and given practical tools, being held accountable in your ministry right where you're at. If you're interested in learning more, or you want to enroll in LFBI, go to lfbi.org.
For people who don't know you, one of the things that I think is really unique about Blade is that he's exceptionally independent. And that's not like for someone who has to work with people, it doesn't inhibit him one bit. He cares for
no,
souls, but he is a very independent person. If there's something that needs to get done, you've always just watched the YouTube videos until you can learn how to do it. You're kind of a Renaissance man. You do a little bit of everything. You can lead worship. You can preach. God's gifted you and skilled you in that way. You know how to remodel and do construction, because that's what you learned growing up in the family that you grew up in. Your
sure.
dad is a house builder. You can work on cars. You can landscape. You can there's not really I would have a hard time coming up with something that you don't know how to do at least a little bit. So can you tell us a little bit about what this moment with this building, with this situation, with these people, how it reveals your weaknesses and inadequacies before the Lord? Like, can you be honest enough with us to say, hey, like these are the things I recognize that I just can't do. I can't do them. It has to be God, or he has to provide me with the people that can, and I can, and here's how I can
Okay.
go without.
The biggest area that I lack and I struggle in is administrative stuff. Um, I I can do it, but it is just a grind for me and just wears me out. Like, um, it's hard. It's hard for me to know what the immediate needs of that are, because we're so small. There isn't a ton of admin. Um, but as it comes to like paperwork, or like even finances, like I'm willing to take care of those things. But those are things that I wish my hands were out of, that I didn't have any part in, that I didn't have to worry about. So that's something that I'm trusting the Lord for, is to have a long term, a key
Mm-hmm.
guy um, that could help me with those things. Um, there are plenty of things I don't know how to do. I think, to your point, my biggest issue is uh, loving to learn a new thing and to do it myself. And so that gets me in a lot of trouble, because the whole point of church planning is inviting people in. And
Mm,
and so my temptation is always, well, I can figure that out, or I don't know how to do that. I'll learn how to do that, and I end up
mm,
wasting time that needs to be given to other things. And so one of the biggest challenges is just navigating and trying to make sense of what does prioritization look like in my life, because there are so many needs, and I could do like any given day I could wake up and just have endless projects I could work on, and yet none of those things actually moving the church plant forward. And so
mm-hmm.
I am independent. I actually function alone pretty well. Um, and I kind of like to like work and build. And so I can get distracted with that stuff. And I just know that I've got to be guarded in that way. And so I just have some personal convictions about what evangelism looks like in my life this year. I do want to leverage the fellowship and just get to work, get a bunch of people out on weekends and
Mm-hmm.
evangelize. Like yesterday, the priority for me was making invitation cards and door hangers, and so that, I was spending my day doing design, and so I'm excited for that. Um, but personally, I also know to make sure that the church moves forward, I can't get distracted with a building and a home. I have to go stand on the streets and try to meet people and get on campuses, try to start Bible studies. And so, anyway, that's my weakness, is to just do a new thing and learn a new thing. I I hate it. I love it. It's just kind of
Yeah.
my problem.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, I think that's something that each of us have to face, is just what we are and aren't good at, and just pray for the grace in every moment to focus on the thing that we need to focus on, and the power of the Lord. Now, one of the thing about Baptists is we you know, especially the ilk that we come from, we're very frugal, conservative,
yeah,
pragmatic, and just in terms of our behavior. And so what that means is, like, I think that probably leaves you to think about the space in terms of when it's not being used, how you might use it, like, in order to continue to fund the work. So have you
yeah,
entertained thoughts about renting the space, and how and what ways? What are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? What are the benefits? What are the pitfalls that come with that?
yeah. I absolutely have, um, especially with how small we are. Um, I do come from a conservative family, so I'm always, yeah, thinking about how we can use our money well and save what we have. The reality is, I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm considering renting, primarily because it might be the way that this church plant is funded, and I'm able to eat, and my family's able to eat, and so we have been supported by the fellowship, and that's been a huge blessing to us. But I am still currently navigating whether or not the finances are going to make sense, and ultimately whether or not I can give myself to the ministry full time, or I'm working bivocationally or full time to make sure that the payments are made for the building. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the building can be paid for through bivocational work in a career that I would start, or people giving, if somebody would just wanted to be that kind to us, or us renting the
Mm-hmm.
space. And so I've entertained leasing. That might be to a church. I would want to make sure that, uh, for the most part, I know it's not going to be perfect, but they are like minded. That some craziness isn't going to come up in our space, and things aren't going to be undone, or some weird spiritual things are happening. None of that's going to happen in our building. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, I'm more than willing to support other works that are trying to get off the ground, that are wanting to see the gospel go forth. A great example of this. is I know that in the process of us purchasing this building, there was another church, Baptist church, that I think preaches the gospel and believes the Bible. That is a deaf church, and they're up in North County, and they were really wanting to acquire this space. And so, if a church like that, a Bible believing Baptist deaf church, wanted to rent our space, I would more than gladly open our doors and welcome them in, and obviously have a mutual benefit. Us be able to be relieved financially, but then also them to be blessed and us to be blessed together and have that fellowship with them. It would really be a joy. And so there are
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
hundreds of opportunities like that I'm unaware of that God has to make clear, and I'll take those as they come. Right now, I'm trusting the Lord to not have to do that. I'm trusting the Lord to get established and be able to have this as our home and have this as a space that's protected, that we're in, that we use, and that we grow out of and get established in. But that might not be what is possible, or it might be that God is
Mm-hmm.
making a way through other means. And so um, I don't know. I'd rent
Yeah.
to. I know there's other businesses in the area that are interested in the space. I would be willing to open up our space as a wedding venue, and rent it out and bring in income that way. My wife. This is actually why I was looking at real estate prior to moving to the city and thinking about business ventures, is because I I did a business degree in entrepreneurship. I worked at a co-working space when I graduated college. I helped a guy renovate an old post office, and we built out little cubicles, and we had an event space. And so I learned event space management and all the software that goes into managing a work like that. And then my family's been in the wedding industry for a long time, all through high school. My mom was in a wedding, like catering and rental business, and had a
Mm.
ton of stuff left over. And then my wife and my sister-in-law started a flower company. And so I was thinking, okay, is there a way for us to even utilize a church building or a space for a venue where we could,
Mm-hmm.
bring in income that way? Truly, I kind of live in ambiguity. I don't mind not, having a bunch of structure and a super tight plan. I just that seems like a kind of a boring life. So I just want to be flexible
Yeah.
and obviously wise. But I've been entertaining all of those possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so let's, just for a second, if there's a church planter that's listening and they find themselves in a situation where a, a too good to be true opportunity arises, right? Like, something that would be very hard to pass up, a building, something comes across their path. And again, we've got church planters that are struggling through these issues in Nairobi, in Southeast Asia, in Portland, in Georgia, in London, people that are wrestling through where's the next space that we meet in that will be
Right.
conducive to do ministry? Where do we go from our homes and our living rooms? Where do we go from this small, retail space that we're renting to, something else, right? When the opportunity arises, what questions should those pastors and church planters, those missionaries, should they ask themselves before saying yes? And what safeguards would you recommend um, if they do decide to move forward?
And I part of me would say, ask me in 5 years. Like it's so fresh. I'm so
Yeah,
young. I don't know.
sure.
I don't feel like I have a ton of authority in this position. I will say, I did have the privilege of being a part of a church plant that was, home, venue space, three venue spaces, and then a building, and now a build. And so I
Hmm.
have, seen a lot, and everything comes with its own issues. And again, I would say it's not greener on the other side. It's just different. It's
Yeah.
just a different tool to use for the ministry. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing. I Man, it's hard for me to say it. I'm just very careful because I know there are a lot of guys who don't have the blessing of a building, and I don't really know how to speak to it and not sound condescending or arrogant in any way. All I know is what God brought us through, which was a process of a lot of prayer, um, a lot of work, and a lot of conversations and a lot of relationship building, a lot of door knocking, like literally door knocking and showing up in spaces and walking through spaces and even walking through spaces knowing I'm not going to buy this building, but I've got to think through what it would look like to try to make this work and make this happen. Um, and so, yeah, prayer is the obvious thing. The next would be just don't fall in love with physical buildings. God's building a spiritual house, and that's what we want to be focused on. So that's actually, we started the book of Ezra on Sunday mornings, and just want to talk about rebuilding, God giving us a space of grace to see a little bit of reviving and to see his house built. And what is that house? It's, in the Old Testament, it's a physical temple, but in the New Testament, we know God's building a spiritual one. And so that's where our focus has to be. And so whatever gets that done, if it's a real estate play, fine. If it's a home church network, great. We just have to, remain flexible. Practical things, where are you going to live? You've got to figure out that. And is that then going to be the church? How are you going to leverage that? And with that, what about parking? And so, okay, great. You found a great home. You found a great neighborhood. You even got in that neighborhood to be strategic in reaching your neighbors. Oh, and by the way, every single week you park 50 cars out in front of their house. Ineffective. You just lost your neighbors. Like, you have to think about parking. You guys obviously are struggling with that at Midtown Baptist Temple, and have fought that for years. I know of other churches in the fellowship where the bottleneck is actually not the building or the space they're meeting in, it's the parking, and that's going to actually really hinder the growth of the church and the work. It seems silly, but it's really really important. I've found some really great spaces that we could have purchased that even had parsonages, but they were in horrible areas of the city. It's like, okay, great, you found the great space and building, but God wasn't in this, and there was really no connection. I've heard a lot of guys, as I've talked with them, really struggle with the relationship of, um, am I forcing myself into this? Like the relationship of wanting to see God do something amazing and even miraculous at some level, but then also how much of my hand do I put to trying to make this happen, and me still be at peace about me not forcing myself into this situation. I don't know if you can articulate that better, but my conviction is work as hard as you possibly can and do everything you possibly can to acquire a space, and just don't trust in that, and ask God to shut doors, and don't manipulate, and be patient. Don't force timelines. Don't force yourself in, but you have to knock. Like you have to do the hard work of understanding a market and understanding a building and if it's right. Um, so it's to be honest, it's a really hard. It is a hard thing to navigate. Like, what does it look like for me to trust God and do everything I can, but not also like force myself into something He's not in? And the verse that really comforted me through this last year was, "A man deviseth his way, and the Lord directs his steps." And so I knew, I know that has a negative connotation. I knew that I was devising a way. I was left as a church planner to make a decision on how I was going to enter into the city. And so, okay, Lord, here's my devised way. I'm going to trust that in every decision I make, you're going to direct my individual steps. And so, okay, you've allowed me into this building on a Sunday morning, the first week we start a Bible study. I'm trusting you, Lord. okay, I'm sending
Mm-hmm.
letters to the BMA board, who's the seller. Lord, I'm trusting you in this step. If it's not your will to lease, please shut this door. He shuts the door. Okay, Lord, if you want me to continue to build relationships with the widows and do what I can to show up and care for them, Lord, I'm trusting you. And in every step, um, allowing God to redirect rather than saying, okay, here's my plan, Lord. This is what I'm doing. Bless it. It's like I don't want
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God to bless the plans that I've created. I want to say, okay, Lord, direct me in yours. So here's the way that I'm
Yeah.
going. I'm going to commit my way to you, and I'm going to trust you. Would you direct me in the path? So I'm walking this
Mm-hmm.
general direction. I'm trusting you now, Lord. Give me the details I need to know how to move forward. And I don't know what else can we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, so much of what's required in church planting, it's the whole thing is a giant faith proposition, and you're taking tons of risks with your life and with your family, and you're deciding to do something that's, uh, you know, by its very nature, new, and there's a giant learning curve, and you're committing to all that. You're saying to the Lord, "Yeah, I'm willing." But then to not trust Him for the little things once you're on the
Right.
ground,
Right.
to start trusting in your flesh or your best laid plans, when really you should just be listening and paying attention. And if you're going any one direction, that you see like you're running into problems, and you hear that you can sense or see that the Lord is saying, no, this is not an open door. You have to be receptive to that. You can't go around kicking doors down and making things happen, because you'll end up with the manifestation of your best plans, and it won't be of the Lord, and it won't be
Right.
unto His glory. It'll be in the power of your flesh, and no one wants that,
Right.
because the labor of our hands is very, very insignificant. So, man, your story and the things that you're sharing are really, really important. And Blade, I'm just grateful for your willingness to take the time to talk about it.
Man, it's been good to have a conversation. I know that I'm constantly learning and do not have anything figured out. Um, I think to your last comment there, it made me think of Hebrews chapter 4. The Word of God is a discerner of the thoughts and the intent of the heart. And so, what that means is, as a church
Mm-hmm.
planner, you've got to do your due diligence in the Word and in prayer, um, to even make sense of your own thoughts and intentions. And so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you make all these decisions. You trust God for big things, but then at the end of the day, you're left with little decisions to trust Him in, and only
Mm-hmm.
you and the Lord know. Uh, is this an honest pursuit? Is this a humble pursuit? Is this me trying to get what I want? Am I content with exactly where God
Yeah.
has me? Am I truly flexible? We may even, because the heart is wicked and deceitful, we may even convince ourselves otherwise. And so that's right. As believers, we've got to have the Word of God helping us discern the thoughts and the intentions that we have, because I know mine have been messed up many times. And one of the
Mm.
passages God really used in my life regarding this situation is the very last message that I preached to the young adults in my sending church, which was actually the last message I preached to them on Sunday mornings. It was out of the book of Ruth, and it was about. I actually got in the book of Ruth to talk about discipleship, but God, at the exact same time, was challenging me to make a decision on whether or not I was going to mar my inheritance, um, or and ultimately raise up a name of the dead upon the work that He had called me to. And so what that meant was purchasing a
Mm.
field, but also a widow. And I really
Mm.
had to wrestle with what am I willing um, to purchase. And
Mm.
I, I realized that in the story of Ruth, only Boaz can purchase that field. And so devotionally, God was really leading me to the place where I had to be convinced in my heart that only he was going to be able to pay for this, because I didn't know at the time we were moving forward how we were going to acquire this space. But I could see him opening the doors, and I was just looking at it thinking, Lord, I don't know how this is going to get done. And I don't know if I'm willing um,
Hmm.
to do, I don't know if I'm willing to do this. And anyway,
Right.
in the abandonment of all of that, God used my last message to the young adults to really show me that he alone could take care of the need. And so yeah, we just got to
Mhm.
rest in the Lord. I do appreciate the time you've given, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to this series. I know that every single
Yeah.
day I am learning and trying to figure this thing out. So it is not easy.
Well, I thank you for your contribution, and we love you. We're praying for you. The fellowship's praying for you, um, man, and we're excited to see what God does. We're excited for all the reports that you're going to give us.
Oh man.
And so, for those of you who don't know, I mean, we're going to be doing a series of episodes that address the topic of dealing with meeting spaces, church buildings, living rooms. Where do we host Bible studies? Where do we gather people together for fellowship? As we know, the body of Christ is made up of people, and they're not walls. They're not four walls and a roof. But those things are important, and they play a role. And so we're going to continue to investigate what it looks like for us to utilize them and leverage those spaces to the glory of God, and ultimately to live out the Great Commission. Blade has done an awesome job of helping us get that conversation kickstarted today. And so again, thank you, Blade. We appreciate you.
Yeah, it's been great to be with you.
And so if you're interested, Blade is a graduate of the Living Faith Bible Institute, and we want to invite you, if you have any interest in growing in your faith or becoming a pastor or a church planter, you desire to be used by God, you need to know the Word of God. You need to have a philosophy of ministry that's derived from biblical principles. You need men who have gone before you to lead you and to guide you in the work of your development and your personal discipleship. And so the Living Faith Bible Institute is a very effective and flexible and appropriate place for you to come get educated in God's word. Man, we're growing year over year. There's lots of people that are joining us, men just like Blade Sbisa, who want to be used mightily by the Lord. And so if you've got questions or you're curious, visit lfbi.org. You can learn more about our school, about what we believe, about what we're investing in people. And we would love to have you next semester if you are able, lfbi.org. If you enjoyed this episode, you've got a church planter or a missionary in your life that you love and you think would benefit from the conversation today, please share this with them. Share it on your Facebook page, like, comment, all the stuff. But with all that, we love you and we thank you for your time and your willingness to listen. We can't wait to spend more time with you again next week for another episode of the Postscript. God bless. Thank you for listening to the Postscript. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating and review in order to help other people find our podcast. If you value this show, please help us continue creating content by supporting Living Faith Bible Institute at lfbi.org/support.